for some inexplicable reason. Perhaps it was the result of the Iraqi President Talabani's recent visit to Iran, and when he returned, made a report on Camp Ashraf to the U.S. Embassy from none other than the Iranian regime's supreme leader. While the international community has called for a humanitarian and consensus solution to the plight of the residents of Camp Ashraf, the current U.S. position in Iraq neither observes the residents' rights nor does it provide a consensus solution. In fact, it is the opposite. HR Resolution 332 urges the President of the United States to, again, quote, take all necessary and appropriate steps to prevent a forced relocation of Camp Ashraf residents either within or outside of Iraq in violation of the relevant provisions of international humanitarian law. In addition, the European Parliament, the United Nations, and prominent independent Iraq officials, as well as residents of the camp itself, have all vehemently rejected forcible displacement. The only exceptions are Tehran, a complicit Baghdad, and what appears to be, unfortunately, the U.S. Department of State. As the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Hugh Shelton, has stated, this is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for ethnic cleansing, far outside the reaches now of the international community. Abandoning Ashraf is tantamount to giving the Iranian regime an incredibly stronger hand in Iraq. Instead of aligning with the Iranian regime's demands, we should be calling for a robust presence of U.S. assistance mission in Iraq monitoring teams to be placed in the camp to protect the residents against further massacres. And as the House Foreign Affairs Committee has stipulated, the U.S. should endorse the European Parliament's proposal to relocate the residents to third countries after negotiations are conducted, on the condition that the situation in the camp would be normalized first. This is the only plan that both respects Iraq's sovereignty while ensuring that the human rights of Ashraf residents are protected. Now, Tehran obviously views the presence of the MEK in Iraq as a threat, a very large threat. And hence it's no surprise that the regime not only publicly supports the idea of displacement within Iraq, but actively lobbies for it in Baghdad and elsewhere. Much of this so-called lobbying is orchestrated by the MOIS through provisions of misleading, actually completely erroneous information. Disinformation, as we use in the spy world. Disinformation campaigns basically are feeble attempts to convince the United States and its organizations, the State Department, even Congress, as well as international observers, that the residents of Ashraf should be displaced, and further, that the MEK should remain on the Foreign Terrorist Organization list. Now, I've looked at some of the reporting that was provided to the Department of State, much of it redacted, some of it previously classified. And in looking through that, you have to look towards almost the fine print. Now, I was in the intelligence business for almost 30 years. And when you get a report, the first thing a policymaker should do is to determine the veracity and the accuracy of the source. The veracity of the source and the accuracy of the information. In looking through these reports, every single one that I reviewed said that either the source was unable to be recontacted or the information could not be verified. So basically what you're getting is rumor, speculation, with obviously a political motive. For an intelligence organization to be able to effectively promote a misinformation campaign, they have to have a couple of things at their disposal. They have to know the environment. Now, that's easy for the MOIS. It's their backyard. They have to understand who their adversaries are. In this case, it's the MEK, it's the United States, it's international observers. They have to be able to exploit those vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities are, as we've seen in the press, because this is an open society, a debate over America's continued military presence in the region. Specifically as to what's happened in Iraq, the threat from Iran, a range of issues. So what the MOIS will do is fabricate information, use sources, we call them social and media contacts, and these are either recruited people or people that they've just contacted once or twice. They propagate orchestrated pieces of information that promote their own views. As an example, you've all probably seen the erroneous stories which have circulated in the press and are still circulating, stating that the MEK harbors terrorist groups, trained women as suicide bombers, responsible for plane hijackings, bomb threats. While the MOS has considerable skills in these areas of espionage, it cannot hide the truth. The truth that the MEK promotes a peaceful, nonviolent, and democratic Iran, are committed to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as international conventions and covenants, and promotes a domestic and foreign policy based on peaceful coexistence. The time is long past for the MEK to be listed from the Foreign Terrorist Organizations list. It was the MEK that provided incredibly useful information to the intelligence community on the Iranian nuclear threat. And as Ambassador Bolton pointed out, this corroborated a lot of other information that we had, and in some instances provided us with information that we had not previously heard. So as I said, it's a long time in coming. There is no, at least in my opinion, based on 30 years of service, there is no legitimate reason based on intelligence, either assessments or on collected information, which would continue the propagation of MEK on the foreign terrorist organizations networks. The time is long past. It needs to be corrected for whatever reason, but it needs to be done now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Andy. Now, I promised you a broad coalition. In the 30 years I've been in this town, there may have been an issue where John Bolton and I stood on the same side and fought for the same team. I don't know what it was. It took the mullahs to bring us together. But while we may not have often agreed on many issues in the past, John Bolton has been a distinguished and a strong voice for the things in which he believes. He represented the United States in the United Nations as our permanent representative. He served as Assistant Secretary for Arms Control and International Security, and is now a Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. We're very proud to have his strong voice here today. John Bolton.